The stars hung cold and distant in the endless darkness of space as the UNS Valiant moved slowly through the outer regions of human territory. The warship was massive, nearly a kilometer long, with smooth gray hull plating that reflected the light from distant suns. Inside the ship, Captain Daniel Wright sat in his command chair on the bridge, watching the display screens that showed empty space in all directions. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of sensor equipment. Daniel had been in command of the Valiant for 6 months now, and he knew every sound the ship made. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with short brown hair starting to show gray at the temples. His uniform was crisp and clean, the rank insignia on his collar polished to a shine. "Captain, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Benjamin Cole from the communications station. He was young, barely 25, with bright eyes that showed his excitement at anything unusual. "It's big, sir, really big." Daniel leaned forward in his chair. "Can you identify it?" "No, sir," Benjamin replied, his fingers moving quickly across his control panel. "It's not matching anything in our database. The energy signature is completely unknown." Lieutenant Commander Corinne Phillips stood from her station and walked over to stand beside the captain's chair. She was Daniel's second in command, a sharp woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" she asked. "I don't think so," said Dr. Laura Bennett from the science station. She was older than most of the bridge crew, with gray streaks in her blonde hair and glasses that she wore even though medical technology could have fixed her vision years ago. "The energy readings are too organized, too controlled. This is definitely artificial." Daniel felt his pulse quicken slightly, though his face remained calm. "Red alert. Battle stations. Benjamin, try to open a communication channel. Use all standard first contact protocols." Lights on the bridge shifted to a dim red glow as alarm klaxons sounded throughout the ship. All across the Valiant, 847 crew members rushed to their stations. Weapons systems came online, shields activated, and engineering teams stood ready to route power wherever it was needed most. "Sir, the object is coming out of faster-than-light travel," said Lieutenant Greg Palmer from the tactical station. He was a serious man who rarely smiled, his eyes constantly watching the threat assessment displays. "Distance is now 200,000 kilometers and closing." Then space itself seemed to tear open. A swirling vortex of purple and blue energy appeared on the main viewing screen, and from it emerged a ship that made the Valiant look like a child's toy. It was enormous, at least 10 kilometers long, with a dark hull covered in strange symbols and patterns that seemed to glow with their own light. Dozens of weapon ports lined its surface, and sensor arrays the size of buildings rotated slowly as they scanned the surrounding space. "My God," whispered Corinne, staring at the screen. Daniel kept his voice steady. "Analysis, Dr. Bennett." Laura's fingers flew across her controls, pulling up data as fast as the ship's computers could process it. "They're using some kind of quantum slip drive for faster-than-light travel. Their power output is enormous, at least 5 times what we would need for a ship that size. Weapon systems appear to be plasma-based, and their shields are using conventional electromagnetic deflection technology." "Are they a threat?" Daniel asked. "Their weapons could definitely hurt us, sir," Greg reported. "But their technology seems older than ours in some ways, more brute force and less efficient." "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission," Benjamin announced. "Audio only. They're speaking English, sir, perfect English." "Put it through," Daniel ordered. A voice filled the bridge, deep and resonant with a strange accent that made each word sound clipped and harsh. "Primitive vessel of Earth, you will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. I am Admiral Zekther of the Krell Collective. Your species has been observed and catalogued. You will submit to Krell authority and accept integration into the Collective as a subordinate member species. Resistance is futile and will result in the destruction of your vessel." The bridge crew looked at each other in shock. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. This was first contact with an alien species, possibly the most important moment in human history. He needed to be smart, not emotional. "Open a channel, Benjamin," Daniel said quietly. Channel open, sir. Daniel stood from his chair and straightened his uniform. Admiral Zekther, I am Captain Daniel Wright of the United Earth Navy ship Valiant. Humanity welcomes peaceful contact with your species and looks forward to friendship and cooperation between our peoples. However, we will not submit to boarding or inspection without proper diplomatic negotiations. We are a sovereign species and will be treated as such. There was a long pause. When Zekther spoke again, his voice carried surprise and something that might have been anger. You refuse. You dare refuse the Krell Collective. We have dominated this region of space for 2,000 years. 43 civilizations have joined the collective under our guidance. You are a young species with barely 70 colonies. You have no right to refuse our authority. With respect, Admiral, every species has the right to self-determination, Daniel replied calmly. We seek friendship, not subjugation. On the main screen, they could see the massive Krell ship beginning to move, turning slowly to bring its weapons to bear on the Valiant. Warning lights began flashing across Greg's tactical display. Sir, they're powering up weapons, Greg reported, his voice tense. Multiple plasma cannons are charging. They also have missile tubes loading. Shields to maximum, Daniel ordered, but do not power weapons yet. I want them to know we're defending ourselves, not attacking. Karen moved closer to Daniel and spoke quietly so only he could hear. Captain, if they fire on us, can we win? Daniel's lips curved into a slight smile. Yes, Commander, we can win, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. Zekther's voice came through the speakers again. You leave me no choice, Captain Wright. Since you refuse peaceful integration, we will disable your ship and take your crew as prisoners. You will learn to respect Krell authority. I am initiating a full tactical scan of your vessel. Once we understand your primitive systems, we will know exactly how to disable them without destroying you. Sir, they're scanning us, Laura announced. It's a deep penetration scan, very thorough. They're probing every system, every power conduit, every weapon port. Daniel settled back into his chair and folded his hands in his lap. The slight smile remained on his face. Let them scan, Doctor. Let them see everything. Commander Ryan Tucker, the ship's security chief, stood near the back of the bridge. He was a huge man, nearly 2 meters tall with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. He caught the captain's expression and grinned slightly. Ryan had served with Daniel for 15 years and knew exactly what that smile meant. Aboard the Krell flagship, Scan Master Vixta watched her displays with growing confusion. She was a tall, thin alien with scaled skin that shimmered green and gold under the bridge lights. Her large eyes had 3 pupils each, allowing her to process multiple data streams simultaneously. Right now, all 6 pupils were dilated in shock. Admiral, she said, her voice trembling slightly. The scan results are impossible. Zekther turned from his command throne, his reptilian face showing irritation. He was massive even for a Krell, with dark red scales and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Explain. The power readings from the human ship exceed theoretical maximums for a vessel of that size, Vixta said, her clawed fingers pointing to various displays. Their reactor is generating energy outputs that should require a ship 3 times larger, and the technology is completely unknown to our databases. You must be reading it wrong, snapped Zekther. Run the scan again. Vixta ran the scan 3 more times. Each time, the results were the same. Admiral, their weapon systems show energy signatures consistent with directed singularity projectors. That technology is theoretical even for us. We've never been able to make it work in practice. Their point defense grid has targeting computers that process information faster than our systems can even measure. The hull composition includes materials with atomic structures that violate known physics. The bridge fell silent. Other Krell officers stared at the displays in disbelief. Tactical Commander Rockmer, a scarred veteran of 100 battles, spoke up from his station. Admiral, if these readings are accurate, that small human vessel could destroy our flagship in direct combat. Zekther's yellow eyes widened. In 2,000 years of Krell dominance, no one had ever told him that an enemy ship could defeat his own. That's impossible. They are a primitive species. They have only been in space for a few hundred years. The scan does not lie, Admiral, Vixta said quietly. Whatever path these humans took in their development, it led them to technologies far beyond our own. Back on the Valiant, Laura was completing her own analysis of the Krell ship. "Captain, I've finished my assessment of their vessel. Their technology is approximately 300 years behind ours in most areas. The fusion reactors they're using are powerful but inefficient. Their weapons rely on superheated plasma, which our shields can deflect easily. Their targeting systems are too slow to track our point defense weapons. So we could take them in a fight," Karen asked. "We could destroy them in under a minute," Laura said bluntly. "They wouldn't be able to damage us significantly before we crippled their ship." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure they understand that before anyone does something stupid." He stood and walked to the center of the bridge. "Benjamin, open a channel again." "Channel open, sir." "Admiral Zekther, by now your scan of my ship is complete. I assume you've seen our capabilities. I want you to understand something very important. Humanity developed in isolation from the rest of the galaxy. We couldn't expand easily because we started in a region of space with few habitable worlds. So instead of spreading out, we focused all our energy and resources on technological advancement. We had to innovate to survive." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The Valiant is one of 47 ships in its class currently in service. We also have larger vessels with even more advanced capabilities. I'm telling you this not to threaten you, but to help you understand our position. We will defend ourselves if necessary, but we would much prefer to be your friends and allies." There was no response for a long moment. Daniel could imagine the chaos on the Krell bridge as they tried to process this information. Finally, Zekther spoke, and his voice had lost all its earlier arrogance. "Captain Wright, I must consult with my staff. Will you agree to a temporary ceasefire while we discuss this situation?" "Of course, Admiral," Daniel replied. "Take all the time you need." The channel closed. Karen stepped up beside Daniel. "Do you think they'll try to fight us anyway?" "I hope not," Daniel said. "But just in case, Greg, I want you to demonstrate something for our friends. Lock our point defense system onto every missile, torpedo, and fighter craft aboard their ship. Also acquire firing solutions on their reactor, their bridge, and their weapons arrays. Then transmit the targeting data directly to their tactical displays." Greg's hands moved across his controls with practiced efficiency. "Aye, sir. Targeting. Locked. Transmitting now." On the Krell flagship, warning alarms suddenly blared across every station. Rockmer stared at his tactical display in horror. "Admiral, human ship has acquired weapons locks on us. They've targeted every one of our missiles and fighters. They've also locked onto 17 critical systems throughout our ship." "How long did it take them to acquire those locks?" Zekther demanded. Rockmer checked his systems twice before answering. "0.003 seconds, Admiral. Our sensors barely registered the targeting beams before the locks were complete. Our countermeasures cannot break them. If they fire, we won't be able to stop them." Zekther felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. Fear. True, genuine fear for his ship and his crew. The humans could destroy his flagship before his people could even react. All his assumptions about Krell superiority had just shattered like glass. Political Officer Shenva, a smaller Krell with bright blue scales, spoke carefully. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider the human captain's offer of friendship more seriously." Intelligence Officer Quex, whose species had joined the collective centuries ago, added his thoughts. "We have analyzed human space extensively. They control only 72 star systems compared to our thousands, but if their technology is this advanced, they don't need numbers. A few dozen of their ships could devastate our entire fleet." Zekther closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. "Open a channel to the human ship." "Captain Wright, I request a formal ceasefire and diplomatic negotiations. I would like to come aboard your vessel with a small delegation to discuss terms." On the Valiant's bridge, Daniel felt relief wash through him. "Request granted, Admiral. You and your staff are welcome aboard. I'll have our shuttle bay prepared to receive you." He turned to his crew. "Greg, release all weapons locks. Karen, prepare diplomatic facilities and proper reception protocols. Let's show them that we know how to be good hosts." An hour later, a small Krell shuttle approached the Valiant. The human ship's massive bay doors opened, and the alien craft glided inside. As it settled onto the deck with a hiss of hydraulics, Daniel stood waiting with an honor guard of 20 Marines in dress uniforms. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Admiral Zekther emerged. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick red scales and a crest of horns running along his head. His yellow eyes scanned the bay carefully, taking in the human troops and the advanced equipment around them. Behind him came Rockmer, Shenva, and a science officer named Torvin. Daniel stepped forward and saluted in the traditional Earth military style. "Admiral Zekther, welcome aboard the Valiant. I am Captain Daniel Wright." He gestured to the others around him. "This is Lieutenant Commander Corinne Phillips, my executive officer, Dr. Laura Bennett, our chief science officer, and Commander Ryan Tucker, our security chief." Zekther returned the gesture with a Krell salute, placing his clawed hand over his chest. "Thank you for receiving us, Captain. May I present my senior officers?" They exchanged formal introductions, and Daniel noticed that the Krell seemed nervous. Their eyes kept darting around the bay, and their hands stayed close to their bodies as if they were trying not to touch anything. These were conquerors who suddenly found themselves in the territory of a superior power. "Please follow me," Daniel said, gesturing toward the exit. "We've prepared a conference room where we can talk comfortably." They walked through the corridors of the Valiant, and Daniel watched the Krell officers observing everything around them. The walls were smooth and clean, with lighting panels that provided steady illumination. Crew members moved past in both directions, each one nodding respectfully to the captain and his guests. Everything spoke of discipline, efficiency, and advanced technology. The conference room was large and comfortable, with a long table surrounded by chairs designed to accommodate different body types. Large windows showed the stars outside, and display screens lined one wall. Daniel gestured for everyone to sit. "Before we begin formal discussions," Daniel said once everyone was settled, "I want to make something clear. Humanity seeks friendship and cooperation with other species. We have no desire to conquer or dominate anyone. But we will never submit to foreign authority. We are willing to be equals and allies, but not subjects." Zekther nodded slowly. "Your position is clear, Captain, and after seeing your capabilities, I understand that you have the power to enforce it. I must admit, this is a new experience for the Krell. For 2,000 years, we have been the dominant military force in this region. We have grown accustomed to other species accepting our authority. Why do you demand submission from other species?" Corinne asked. "What benefit does it bring you?" Shenva answered this question. "The Krell believe that organization and hierarchy bring order to the galaxy. Without a strong central authority, there would be chaos and constant warfare between species. We offer protection and stability in exchange for loyalty." "But you also take away freedom," Laura pointed out. "Species that join your collective lose the right to govern themselves." "They gain security," Rockmer countered. "Many civilizations are grateful for Krell protection." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "I don't doubt that some species benefit from joining the collective, but humanity has learned through our own history that freedom is worth fighting for. We would rather face danger as a free people than live safely as slaves." "We do not consider collective members to be slaves," Zekther said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of his own words anymore. "Let me propose an alternative," Daniel said. "Instead of humanity joining the collective as a subordinate member, what if we formed an alliance as equals? We could offer technological assistance and military cooperation. You could provide us with knowledge about the galaxy and diplomatic connections to other species. Both sides would benefit without either losing their sovereignty." The Krell officers looked at each other in surprise. Torvin, the science officer who had been silent until now, spoke up. "You would share your technology with us." "Some of it, yes," Laura answered. "Not our most advanced military systems, at least not right away, but we could share medical technologies, agricultural techniques, things that would improve quality of life for your people. As trust builds between us, we could expand what we share." "This is unprecedented," Shenva said. "The collective has never formed an alliance of equals with another species." "Perhaps it's time to start," Corinne suggested. "The galaxy is a big place. Surely there's room for more than one model of how civilizations can work together." Zekther was quiet for a long time, his yellow eyes staring at the table as he thought. Finally, he looked up at Daniel. "Captain Wright, you have given me much to consider. When I arrived here, I expected to be dictating terms to a primitive species. Instead, I find myself negotiating with a civilization that could destroy my ship with ease. It is humbling." "I understand," Daniel said gently. "Humanity has had our own moments of humility. We thought we were alone in the universe until we met you. Now we realize we're just one species among many. It's frightening and exciting at the same time." "If I agree to this alliance," Zector said slowly, "the collective's leadership will be shocked. Many will see it as weakness. Or they might see it as wisdom." Ryan Tucker spoke up for the first time. His deep voice rumbled across the room. "There's no shame in choosing cooperation over conflict. That's not weakness, that's intelligence." Rockmer actually smiled at that, showing sharp teeth. "I like this human, he speaks truth plainly." Over the next 2 hours they discussed the framework of a possible alliance: trade agreements, technology-sharing protocols, joint military exercises, cultural exchanges. The conversation was cautious at first but grew more relaxed as both sides found common ground. Finally, Zector stood. "Captain Wright, I believe we have the foundation for an agreement. I will need to present this to the collective's Supreme Council for approval, but I will recommend they accept your proposal." Daniel stood as well and extended his hand. Zector looked at it curiously for a moment, then reached out and grasped it carefully. His clawed hand was huge compared to Daniel's, but his grip was gentle. "I think this is the beginning of a good friendship," Daniel said. "I hope you are right," Zector replied. "Though I confess this is not how I expected this day to go." As the Krell delegation prepared to return to their shuttle, Torvin approached Dr. Bennett. "Your technology is truly remarkable," he said. "How did you achieve such rapid advancement?" Laura smiled. "Necessity is the mother of invention, as we say on Earth. When you can't rely on numbers or resources, you have to be smarter than everyone else. We learned to maximize every advantage we could find." "Fascinating," Torvin said. "I would very much like to learn more about your scientific methods." "And I'd be happy to teach you," Laura replied. "That's what allies do." Daniel escorted the Krell back to the shuttle bay personally. As Zector prepared to board his craft, he turned to face the human captain one last time. "You could have destroyed us today," the Admiral said quietly. "Your ship had us completely at your mercy, but you chose peace instead. Why?" Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. "'Cause strength without wisdom is just violence, Admiral. Humanity has fought enough wars among ourselves to know that might doesn't make right. We learned that cooperation builds something lasting, while conquest only breeds resentment and eventual rebellion. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "friends are more valuable than subjects." Zector's expression was impossible for Daniel to read, but his voice carried something that might have been respect. "You are wise for such a young species, Captain Wright. I will remember this lesson." The shuttle lifted off and glided out of the bay. Daniel stood watching until it had rejoined the massive Krell flagship. Then he made his way back to the bridge. His crew stood as he entered. "At ease," he said, settling into his command chair. "Benjamin, send a full report to Earth Command. Include all scan data on the Krell ship and a complete recording of our conversations." "Aye, sir," Benjamin replied, his fingers already moving across his controls. "Karen, what's your assessment of the situation?" Daniel asked. His executive officer thought for a moment before responding. "I think we just changed the course of human history, sir. First contact with an alien species and we turned potential enemies into possible allies. Not bad for a day's work." Daniel smiled. "Let's hope Earth Command sees it the same way." Greg Palmer spoke up from Tactical. "Captain, the Krell ship is powering up its slip drive. Looks like they're preparing to leave." "Good," Daniel said. "Let them go in peace." They watched on the main screen as the massive alien vessel began to glow with purple and blue energy. Space twisted and warped around it, and then it was gone, vanishing into faster-than-light travel. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Ryan Tucker laughed, a deep booming sound. "Did you see their faces when our targeting locks hit them? I thought that Admiral was going to pass out right there on his own bridge." "Disciplined commander," Daniel said, but he was smiling too. "Though I admit, it was satisfying to see their reaction when they realized they weren't the biggest fish in the pond anymore." Laura was reviewing the scan data they'd collected on the Krell ship. "Captain, This information is going to be invaluable. We've learned so much about their technology, their capabilities, their weaknesses. If the alliance doesn't work out, we'll at least know exactly what we're facing. The alliance will work, Daniel said with confidence. They're smart enough to recognize a good deal when they see one, and we're offering them something no one else can: advanced technology and genuine partnership instead of either submission or conflict. Karen moved to stand beside his chair. What do you think happens next, sir? Daniel gazed out at the stars, thinking about the question. I think the galaxy just got a lot more interesting, Commander. We came out here expecting to patrol empty space. Instead, we made first contact with a powerful alien civilization. We showed them that humanity is strong enough to defend itself but wise enough to choose peace. News of this encounter is going to spread. Other species will hear about it. Some will want to be our friends. Others might see us as a threat. Either way, we're ready, Ryan said firmly. Yes, we are, Daniel agreed. Earth spent 200 years building these ships for a reason. Every warship in the fleet was designed to win against superior numbers. We have the technology, the training, and the will to defend ourselves. But more importantly, we have something the Krell don't seem to have. We understand that the strongest position isn't standing alone at the top. It's standing together with allies who trust and respect each other. Laura looked up from her console. That scan they did on us, Captain. Do you think they understood what they were looking at? I mean, really understood. Daniel nodded. Oh, I think Admiral Zekther understood perfectly, Doctor. That's why he agreed to talk instead of fight. He realized that his 2,000 years of military dominance just ended, not because we destroyed his ship, but because he found an opponent who could destroy him but chose not to. That's a lesson that will stick with him. And with us, Karen added quietly. This could have gone very differently if we'd been less careful. True, Daniel acknowledged. Which is why I'm recommending that Earth Command updates all first contact protocols based on what we learned today. We got lucky. The Krell are aggressive but not stupid. If we'd run into a species that attacked first and asked questions later, this could have been a tragedy instead of a triumph. Benjamin turned from his station. Sir, I'm getting a response from Earth Command. They've received our report and acknowledged. They're requesting a real-time conference call in 6 hours. Understood, Daniel said. Looks like we'll be explaining ourselves to the admirals. Karen, start preparing a detailed brief. I want every decision we made documented and justified. On it, sir, she replied. As the bridge crew returned to their normal duties, Daniel allowed himself a moment to truly relax. The tension that had gripped him since the Krell ship appeared finally began to ease. They had navigated one of the most dangerous situations imaginable, first contact with a hostile alien species, and they had done it without firing a shot. But he knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, Admiral Zekther was traveling home to report to his superiors. The Krell Supreme Council would have to decide whether to accept humanity's offer of alliance or reject it. Other alien species would hear about what happened here today. Some would be curious. Others might be frightened, and a few might see humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Daniel Wright had commanded the Valiant for 6 months. In that time, he had drilled his crew relentlessly, preparing them for combat they all hoped would never come. Today, that preparation had paid off in an unexpected way. They had won a victory without violence, achieved security through demonstrated strength combined with diplomatic wisdom. As he sat in his command chair watching the stars drift past on the main screen, Daniel found himself thinking about the future. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had neighbors now, powerful alien civilizations with their own interests and agendas. The peaceful isolation of the past was over, but humanity was ready. They had built ships that could face any threat. They had trained people who could make the right decisions under pressure. And most importantly, they had learned from their own bloody history that force alone never brought lasting peace. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had known for generations. The strongest weapon wasn't the biggest gun or the most powerful ship. It was the wisdom to know when to fight and when to talk, the courage to defend yourself, and the restraint to show mercy to those who would be your enemies. Admiral Zekther had scanned the human warship expecting to find weakness. Instead, he found something that frightened him far more than any weapon could. He found a species that was strong enough to destroy him, but wise enough to offer friendship instead. And in that moment, everything changed. The hours passed slowly as the Valiant continued its patrol route through the outer sectors. Daniel had retired to his ready room, a small office adjacent to the bridge where he could work in private. The walls were lined with books, real paper books that he had collected over the years. In an age where everything was digital, there was something comforting about the weight of a physical book in his hands. But tonight, he couldn't focus on reading. His mind kept returning to the encounter with the Krell. Every decision he had made, every word he had spoken, played through his memory again and again. Had he been too aggressive, too passive? Should he have offered more or demanded more? A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Karen entered, carrying a data pad and 2 cups of coffee. She set one on his desk and settled into the chair across from him. "I thought you might need this," she said, gesturing to the coffee. "You read my mind," Daniel replied, taking a grateful sip. "How's the brief coming along?" "Almost done. I've documented every action we took and the reasoning behind it. Earth Command should have no trouble understanding our decisions." She paused, studying his face. "Are you worried about their reaction?" Daniel considered the question. "A little. We made first contact with an alien species and essentially threatened them with our superior military technology. Some of the admirals back home might think we should have been more diplomatic, less confrontational." "You were as diplomatic as possible given the circumstances," Karen pointed out. "They demanded our surrender. What were we supposed to do, agree?" "No, of course not. But there's always someone who thinks they could have handled it better." He set down his coffee and leaned back in his chair. "The truth is, Karen, I'm more worried about what comes next than what already happened. We opened a door today. Other species are going to come through it. And some of them won't be as reasonable as the Krell turned out to be." Karen finished his thought. "Exactly. We got lucky today. Zekther was smart enough to recognize when he was outmatched. But what happens when we meet a species that doesn't care about casualties? Or one that sees our technology as something to steal rather than something to trade for?" Karen was quiet for a moment, sipping her coffee. "Then we'll deal with it the same way we dealt with this situation. We'll be strong enough to defend ourselves but smart enough to avoid unnecessary conflict." "I hope you're right," Daniel said. "Because ready or not, humanity just became a player in galactic politics, and we have no idea what kind of game we've joined." Down in the ship's mess hall, crew members gathered in small groups, talking excitedly about the day's events. Word had spread quickly through the ship about the alien encounter, and everyone had an opinion about what it meant. Lieutenant Greg Palmer sat with a group of younger officers, answering their endless questions about the tactical situation. "So could we really have destroyed their ship that easily?" asked Ensign Kevin Martinez, a fresh-faced kid who had graduated from the academy 6 months ago. "Yes," Greg answered simply. "Their shields wouldn't have stopped our main batteries and their hull composition was vulnerable to our weapons. If it had come to a fight, we would have won decisively." "But they were so much bigger than us," another ensign said. "How is that possible?" Greg smiled slightly. "Size isn't everything in space combat. It's about technology, tactics, and training. The Krell built their ship big and powerful by their standards, but their standards are outdated compared to ours. It's like comparing a wooden sailing ship to a modern aircraft carrier. The sailing ship might be bigger, but the carrier is infinitely more capable." In the engineering section deep in the ship's core, Chief Engineer Patricia Morgan was conducting routine maintenance on the reactor systems. She was a short woman with gray hair and grease stains permanently embedded under her fingernails. She had been working on Starship engines for 30 years and knew the Valiant systems better than anyone. Her assistant, Lieutenant Tony Chen, worked beside her on the primary power couplings. "Chief, can I ask you something?" he said. "Go ahead," Patricia replied without looking up from her work. "That zero-point energy reactor we use, how far ahead of other species is that technology?" Patricia paused and considered the question. "Hard to say exactly since we don't know what most other species are using, but based on the Krell ship's power signature, I'd estimate we're at least 200 years ahead in power generation technology, maybe more. The efficiency ratios alone are completely different from anything they have. Does that make you nervous? Tony asked. Being so far ahead? Nope, Patricia said cheerfully. Makes me proud. Humans have always been good at innovation when we put our minds to it. We took the theoretical physics that other species probably discovered and actually made it work in practical applications. That takes ingenuity and hard work. In the medical bay, Dr. Stephen Wright, no relation to the captain, was reviewing medical protocols for potential alien contact situations. He was an older man with white hair and a calm demeanor that put patients at ease. His staff gathered around him as he went through the procedures. Remember, we have no idea what kind of biology we might encounter, he told them. The Krell appear to be carbon-based lifeforms like us, but that doesn't mean their biochemistry is similar. If we ever have alien casualties aboard this ship, we'll need to be extremely careful about treatment methods. What if they have diseases we've never encountered? Asked one of the nurses. That's a real concern, Dr. Wright acknowledged, which is why we maintain strict quarantine protocols. But honestly, the chances of an alien disease being able to infect humans is relatively low. Our biochemistries would have to be very similar for cross-species infection to occur. Back in the science labs, Dr. Laura Bennett was still analyzing the data collected from the Krell ship. Her team of scientists crowded around multiple displays, each one showing different aspects of the alien technology. Look at this, Laura said, pointing to a screen showing the Krell weapon systems. They're using magnetic containment for their plasma weapons, but the field geometry is inefficient. They're losing at least 30% of their potential energy output just in the containment process. Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Cole, nodded enthusiastically, and their targeting computers are using linear processing instead of quantum calculations. No wonder they couldn't track our point defense grid. The fascinating thing is that their basic science is sound, Laura continued. They understand the principles behind advanced technology. They just haven't made the leap to practical applications the way we have. It's like they got stuck at a certain level of development and never pushed beyond it. Maybe that's what happens when you conquer instead of innovate, Marcus suggested. Why develop better technology when your current technology is good enough to dominate everyone around you? Laura considered that. You might be right. The Krell have been the dominant power in this region for 2,000 years. They had no incentive to innovate because they had no real competition. Meanwhile, humanity was stuck in a corner of space with limited resources, so we had to innovate or stagnate. 6 hours later, Daniel stood on the bridge with his senior staff gathered around him. The time had come for the conference call with Earth Command. Benjamin had established a secure communication link, and the main viewing screen now showed the faces of 3 admirals sitting in a conference room back on Earth. Admiral Helen Foster spoke first. She was a stern woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes. Captain Wright, we've reviewed your report and all the accompanying data. I have to say, this is one of the most remarkable first contact situations I've ever seen. Thank you, Admiral, Daniel replied formally. I'm not sure that was a compliment, Captain, Admiral Foster continued. You threatened an alien vessel with superior firepower and essentially forced them to negotiate on your terms. Some people here think you were too aggressive. With respect, Admiral, I did not threaten them, Daniel said calmly. I defended my ship and crew from a hostile force that demanded our surrender. When they initiated a tactical scan of my vessel, I simply demonstrated our defensive capabilities to discourage an attack. Admiral James Porter, a younger man with dark skin and a thoughtful expression, spoke up. Captain, walk us through your decision-making process. Why did you choose to let them scan your ship? Because I knew what they would find, sir, Daniel explained. Their scan would reveal our true capabilities, which would make them think twice about attacking us. I calculated that showing strength would prevent conflict more effectively than trying to hide it. The third admiral, Richard Blake, leaned forward with interest. He was older than the other two, with white hair and laugh lines around his eyes. And you were right, Captain. Their scan prevented a battle that would have destroyed their ship and possibly started an interstellar war. That was smart thinking. Thank you, sir, Daniel said, though he could tell Admiral Foster wasn't entirely convinced. "The question now is what happens next," Admiral Foster said. "You've opened diplomatic relations with a powerful alien coalition. They know our capabilities, our location, everything about our military technology. That makes some people very nervous." "I understand their concerns, Admiral," Daniel replied. "But consider the alternative. If we had tried to hide our capabilities, the Krell would have attacked us. We would have destroyed their ship, and they would have sent more ships. Eventually, we would have been at war with the entire collective. Instead, we now have the possibility of a peaceful alliance with them." Admiral Blake nodded approvingly. "I agree with the captain's assessment. We're better off with the Krell knowing what we can do and choosing friendship over conflict." Admiral Porter added his support. Furthermore, the technology exchange he proposed could benefit both sides significantly. We could learn about galactic politics and other species from the Krell, while they get access to some of our less sensitive technologies. Admiral Foster drummed her fingers on the table, clearly thinking hard. Finally, she sighed. "Very well, Captain Wright, you're authorized to continue negotiations with the Krell if they contact you again. However, any technology transfers must be approved by Earth Command before they occur. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, Admiral," Daniel confirmed. "Good. Now then, we're promoting you to Commodore, effective immediately," Admiral Foster continued, and Daniel's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "You'll be given command of a small task force and assigned to continue first contact operations. Your mission is to explore beyond the Epsilon sector and make contact with other species." "I'm honored, Admiral," Daniel said, trying to keep the shock out of his voice. Admiral Blake smiled. "Don't be too honored yet, Commodore. You're getting the job because you've proven you can handle first contact situations without starting wars. But that also means you'll be the one out there on the front lines meeting unknown aliens for the first time. It's going to be dangerous work." "I understand, sir. I'll need to select additional officers for my staff." "Take whoever you need from the Valiant," Admiral Porter said. "We'll also be assigning 2 new frigates to your task force, the UNS Defiant and the UNS Resolute. They're currently finishing their shakedown cruises and will rendezvous with you in 3 weeks. The conference call continued for another hour as they discussed details of the new mission, protocols for future first contact situations, and guidelines for technology sharing. By the time it ended, Daniel's head was spinning with all the new information. As the screen went dark, Karen turned to him with a smile. "Congratulations, Commodore Wright. You've come a long way from patrolling empty space." "I'm not sure if this is a promotion or a punishment," Daniel replied with a wry smile. "They're basically asking me to go out and find more potentially hostile aliens to negotiate with." Ryan Tucker clapped him on the shoulder, nearly knocking him forward. "Look at it this way, sir. At least it won't be boring." Laura Bennett approached with a thoughtful expression. "Commodore, if we're going to be making more first contact situations, I'd like to expand my science team. We'll need specialists in xenobiology, linguistics, and cultural analysis." "Make a list of who you need," Daniel told her. "I'll approve the requisitions." Greg Palmer had been studying the star charts on his tactical display. "Sir, if we're heading beyond the Epsilon sector, we'll be entering completely unexplored territory. No human has ever gone that far from Earth." "Which means we'll have no idea what we're flying into," Daniel acknowledged. "We'll need to be even more careful than we were today. Not every species will be as reasonable as the Krell turned out to be." Benjamin Cole spoke up from communications. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the Krell flagship. It's Admiral Zekther." Daniel felt a flutter of anticipation. "Put him through, Lieutenant." Zekther's reptilian face appeared on the screen. "Commodore Wright, I heard about your promotion. Congratulations are in order." "Thank you, Admiral. News travels fast." "Indeed it does," Zekther replied. "I wanted to inform you that I have presented our agreement to the Krell Supreme Council. After much debate, they have voted to accept an alliance with humanity on the terms we discussed." Relief flooded through Daniel. "That's excellent news, Admiral. I'm very pleased to hear it." "As am I, Commodore, though I must warn you, not everyone in the collective is happy about this decision. There are those who view an equal alliance as a sign of weakness. You may face some resistance from certain Krell factions." "We can handle resistance," Daniel assured him. As long as the official policy is alliance and cooperation, we can work with that. There is one more thing, Zector continued. Word of our encounter has spread to other species in this region. Several civilizations have expressed interest in meeting with humanity. Some are curious, others are concerned about your military capabilities. Can you give me names? Daniel asked. The Vorlax Federation, the Aquian Assembly, and the Chithar Swarm have all made inquiries. The Vorlax are particularly interested, though I would advise caution with them. They have been rivals of the Krell for centuries. Daniel nodded. Thank you for the warning, Admiral. We'll approach any contact with them carefully. I look forward to working with you in the future, Commodore Wright. Perhaps our two species will show the galaxy that cooperation is stronger than conquest. I believe we will, Admiral. Safe travels. The communication ended, and Daniel turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him expectantly, waiting for orders, waiting to see what came next. Well, he said finally, looks like we've got our work cut out for us. The galaxy just got a lot bigger, and humanity is about to become a major player in it. Karen, start working on protocols for multiple first contact scenarios. Laura, begin researching the species Admiral Zector mentioned. Greg, I want tactical assessments of potential threat scenarios. Ryan, review our security procedures for hosting alien delegations. And me, sir? Benjamin asked. You, Lieutenant, are going to help me draft a message to Earth Command explaining that we've just opened diplomatic relations with 4 more alien species, whether we're ready or not. As his crew dispersed to their tasks, Daniel returned to his command chair. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the endless expanse of stars stretching out in all directions. Somewhere out there were civilizations they hadn't met yet, technologies they couldn't imagine, challenges they couldn't predict. But Daniel Wright was ready. Today had proven that humanity could face the unknown with courage, wisdom, and strength. They had turned potential enemies into allies through a combination of demonstrated power and diplomatic skill. Whatever came next, they would handle it the same way. The moment the aliens scanned the human warship, everything had indeed gone wrong for them. But for humanity, everything had gone exactly right. 3 months had passed since the historic encounter with the Krell Collective. Commodore Daniel Wright stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching as his 2 new escort ships, the UNS Defiant and the UNS Resolute, flew in perfect formation beside his flagship. The 3 ships moved through unknown space, venturing deeper into regions where no human had ever traveled before. The bridge was quieter than usual. The crew had grown accustomed to the routine of exploration, but there was always an underlying tension. Every star system they entered could contain new life, new civilizations, new opportunities for friendship or conflict. Daniel had learned to live with that uncertainty. Commodore, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures ahead, said Lieutenant Benjamin Cole from the communications station. His voice carried the same excitement it always did when they found something interesting. It's coming from the 4th planet in the system we're approaching. Daniel leaned forward in his command chair. What kind of energy signatures? Dr. Laura Bennett studied her science displays carefully. They appear to be industrial in nature, sir. Power generation facilities, manufacturing centers, possibly cities. There's definitely intelligent life on that planet. Any ships in the area? Daniel asked Lieutenant Greg Palmer at Tactical. Negative, sir. No vessels detected within sensor range. Whatever civilization is down there, they appear to be limited to their home planet. Daniel considered this information carefully. A species that had developed industry but not space travel yet. This was a delicate situation. First contact with a pre-spacefaring civilization required special protocols to avoid cultural contamination. Commander Phillips, what do the regulations say about contact with species that haven't developed faster than light travel? Daniel asked. Karen Phillips pulled up the relevant documents on her display. The guidelines recommend minimal contact, sir. We're supposed to observe from a distance and report back to Earth Command for further instructions. Direct contact is only authorized if the species is already aware of alien life or if they're in immediate danger. We observe and move on, Daniel said, though he felt a twinge of disappointment. He would have liked to meet these people, whoever they were. Sir, I'm picking up distress signals from the planet, Benjamin suddenly announced. Multiple sources. They're broadcasting on primitive radio frequencies. Laura's displays lit up with new information. Commodore, I'm detecting weapons fire on the surface. Energy weapons, chemical explosives, and what appears to be nuclear detonations. The planet is at war. Daniel stood from his chair and walked to the center of the bridge. War. A civilization tearing itself apart, possibly on the verge of extinction. The regulations said minimal contact, but they also mentioned immediate danger as an exception. Can you determine how bad it is? He asked Laura. She worked her controls, pulling up visual images of the planet's surface. The main viewing screen showed cities in flames, massive craters where nuclear weapons had struck, and clear evidence of widespread destruction. It's catastrophic, sir. Based on the radiation levels and the scale of destruction, I estimate they've already lost at least 30% of their population. At this rate, they'll render their planet uninhabitable within weeks. Commander Tucker, assemble a security team, Daniel ordered. Dr. Bennett, prepare a first contact package with medical supplies and radiation treatment equipment. Karen, draft a message in their language explaining who we are and that we're here to help. Sir, are you sure about this? Karen asked quietly. This could be considered interference in their natural development. Their natural development is about to end in extinction, Daniel replied firmly. I won't stand by and watch an entire species destroy itself when we have the power to help. Besides, once they see our ships, they'll know aliens exist anyway. We might as well make the introduction productive. The Valiant moved into orbit around the planet. Daniel could see the destruction more clearly now. This world had been beautiful once with blue oceans and green continents. Now it was scarred by war, the atmosphere choked with smoke and radiation. Benjamin, broadcast our message on all frequencies, Daniel commanded. The young lieutenant activated the transmission. Karen's carefully crafted message went out in the planet's dominant language, which their computers had translated from the radio broadcasts. The message was simple and direct. Humanity came in peace, offered assistance, and asked for a ceasefire so they could talk. For several minutes, there was no response. Then the communications board lit up with incoming transmissions from multiple sources on the planet below. Sir, we're receiving hundreds of responses, Benjamin reported. Most are asking if this is real. Some think it's a trick by their enemies. A few are threatening to shoot us down if we approach. Can you identify any central government or authority? Daniel asked. There appear to be two major factions at war, Benjamin answered. The Northern Coalition and the Southern Alliance. Both control roughly equal portions of the planet. I'm also detecting several smaller neutral nations that are trying to stay out of the conflict. Daniel made a decision. Open a channel to both the Northern Coalition and the Southern Alliance. I want to speak to their leaders directly. It took nearly an hour of complicated negotiations through intermediaries before Daniel found himself on a video call with two alien leaders. The screen split to show both of them simultaneously. On the left was Chancellor Victor Kane of the Northern Coalition, a tall humanoid with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern on his face. On the right was Premier Lysa Vex of the Southern Alliance, shorter and stockier with dark purple skin and elaborate ridges running along her skull. Both aliens stared at Daniel with expressions that mixed fear, wonder, and suspicion. I am Commodore Daniel Wright of the United Earth Navy, Daniel began, speaking slowly and clearly. My people come from a planet many light years from here. We detected your civilization and came to make peaceful contact, but what we found instead was war. This is none of your concern, alien, Victor Kane said coldly. His voice was deep and harsh through the translation software. The Southern Alliance started this war with their aggression. We will finish it. That's a lie, Lysa Vex shot back angrily. The Northern Coalition has been oppressing our people for generations. We fight for freedom and justice. I don't care who started it, Daniel interrupted before they could continue arguing. What I care about is that you're destroying your own planet. We've detected multiple nuclear detonations. Your atmosphere is becoming toxic. Your oceans are being poisoned. At this rate, your world will be uninhabitable in a matter of weeks. Both leaders fell silent, and Daniel could see the truth of his words reflected in their faces. They knew what they were doing to their planet. They just couldn't stop. "We cannot surrender," Victor said finally. "Too much blood has been spilled, too many lives lost. Our people demand justice." "And our people will never submit to northern tyranny," Lysa added. "We would rather die free than live as slaves." Daniel took a deep breath. This was the critical moment. "What if I offered you a third option? What if both sides agreed to a ceasefire, and humanity served as neutral mediators to help you negotiate a peace agreement? We have no stake in your conflict. We're not here to take sides or conquer your planet. We just want to prevent the extinction of your species." "Why would you help us?" Lysa asked suspiciously. "What do you gain from this?" "Nothing material," Daniel answered honestly. "But my species has been where you are now. We nearly destroyed ourselves in wars just like this one. We know the pain and the suffering that comes from conflict. If we can help you avoid the mistakes we made, that's reward enough." Victor's 4 eyes studied Daniel carefully. "You said your species nearly destroyed itself. How did you survive?" "We learned to talk instead of fight," Daniel said. "We learned that our similarities were more important than our differences. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But eventually we realized that working together made us all stronger than fighting alone ever could." The two alien leaders looked at each other through the split screen. For the first time since the conversation began, Daniel saw something other than anger in their eyes. He saw exhaustion, sadness, and perhaps a tiny spark of hope. "If we agree to a ceasefire," Lysa said slowly, "what guarantees do we have that the other side won't use it to prepare a stronger attack?" "You have my word that humanity will monitor both sides equally," Daniel promised. "We have the technology to watch your entire planet simultaneously. Any violation of the ceasefire will be immediately detected and reported. Plus, we're prepared to land medical teams and radiation cleanup specialists to help repair the damage already done." "Your technology must be very advanced," Victor observed. "Your ship appeared in our orbit without warning. Our most powerful weapons probably couldn't even scratch your hull." "That's correct," Daniel admitted. "Which is why you can trust that we're not here to conquer you. If we wanted your planet, we could take it easily. But that's not who we are. We believe every species has the right to determine its own future." Over the next several hours, Daniel negotiated the terms of a temporary ceasefire. Both sides would pull back their forces to defensive positions. No new attacks would be launched. Humanitarian aid would be allowed to reach civilian populations. And most importantly, representatives from both factions would come aboard the Valiant for peace negotiations. When the ceasefire finally took effect, Daniel felt relief wash over him. The first step was always the hardest. 2 days later, delegations from both the Northern Coalition and the Southern Alliance arrived at the Valiant. Daniel had prepared the main conference room for the negotiations, with equal space and seating for both sides. He had also assigned Commander Ryan Tucker and a team of Marines to provide security and ensure no violence broke out during the talks. Chancellor Victor Kane arrived first, bringing 5 advisors with him. They all wore formal military uniforms decorated with medals and insignia. Their 4 eyes darted around the conference room, taking in every detail of human technology. Premier Lysa Vex arrived shortly after with her own team of advisors. They wore simpler clothing but carried themselves with quiet dignity. When the two groups saw each other, tension immediately filled the room. Daniel stood at the head of the table and gestured for everyone to sit. "Thank you all for coming. I know this isn't easy for either side, but the fact that you're here, talking instead of fighting, is already a victory. We're only here because you forced us to stop fighting," one of Victor's advisors said bitterly. "True," Daniel acknowledged. "But now that you've stopped, maybe you can remember why you started. Every war begins with a genuine grievance. Tell me, what were you fighting about before the fighting itself became the only thing that mattered?" The question seemed to catch both sides off guard. They looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Lysa spoke. "It began with resource distribution. The Northern Coalition controlled the richest mineral deposits and the most fertile farmland. They used that control to dominate trade and keep the southern regions poor and dependent. We offered fair trade agreements," Victor countered. But the South wanted everything for free. They refused to pay market prices for resources that cost us money and effort to extract. Market prices that you set artificially high to maintain your power, Lysa shot back. Daniel held up a hand to stop the argument before it escalated. So the core issue is economic inequality. The North has resources the South needs but can't afford to buy at the prices being asked. Is that accurate? Both leaders nodded reluctantly. And that economic dispute eventually led to political tension, which led to military buildups, which led to the first shots being fired, Daniel continued. After that, the original issues got lost in cycles of revenge and retaliation. Does that sound familiar? Again, both sides nodded. Here's what I don't understand, Daniel said, leaning forward. You're all the same species. You share the same planet. You breathe the same air and drink the same water. Why not just share the resources too? Why maintain artificial borders and separate governments when cooperation would benefit everyone? Because we have fundamental disagreements about how society should be organized, Victor explained. The North believes in strong central authority and traditional values. The South wants radical democracy and constant change. So different political philosophies, Daniel said. My species has those too. We have nations with different governments, different beliefs, different ways of doing things. But we learned that diversity doesn't have to mean division. You can maintain your cultural identities while still cooperating on things that benefit everyone. Over the next week, Daniel facilitated discussions between the two factions. He brought in human experts on economics, political science, and conflict resolution. Dr. Bennett provided scientific data showing how the environmental damage could be repaired if they worked together. Corinne Phillips helped draft frameworks for power-sharing agreements that would give both sides a voice in planetary governance. The negotiations were difficult and often heated. There were moments when Daniel thought the whole thing would fall apart. But slowly, progress was made. Both sides began to see each other as people rather than enemies. They started talking about their fears and hopes instead of their grievances and demands. On the 8th day, they reached an agreement. The planet would be unified under a new federal system that preserved regional autonomy while creating centralized institutions for resource management and environmental protection. Both the North and South would have equal representation in a new planetary council. Economic resources would be distributed based on need rather than political power. It wasn't perfect. Both sides had to compromise on things they considered important. But it was peace, real and lasting peace built on mutual agreement rather than military victory. As the alien delegations prepared to return to their planet to begin implementing the agreement, Victor approached Daniel privately. "Commodore Wright, I must confess something," the Chancellor said. "When your ships first appeared, my military advisors urged me to attack you. They said you might be invaders who would conquer our world." "What changed your mind?" Daniel asked. "You could have conquered us easily," Victor replied. "Your technology is so far beyond ours that resistance would have been futile. But instead of taking what you wanted by force, you offered to help. You spent days negotiating peace between two sides you had no obligation to care about. That taught me something important about strength." "What's that?" Daniel asked with genuine curiosity. "That true strength isn't just the power to destroy," Victor said thoughtfully. "It's the wisdom to know when not to use that power. You showed us that the strongest position is the one where everyone benefits from your strength, not just yourself." Daniel smiled. "That's a lesson my species learned the hard way. I'm glad we could help you learn it a bit easier." As the Valiant prepared to leave orbit, Daniel received a transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Helen Foster's face appeared on his private screen. "Commodore Wright, we've received your reports on the situation," she said. "What you did was risky and technically violated several protocols about contact with pre-spacefaring species." "Yes, Admiral, I know," Daniel replied, preparing for a reprimand. "Which is why we're officially commending you for it," Admiral Foster continued, and Daniel's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You prevented a planetary extinction event and brokered a peace agreement between two warring factions. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need out there on the frontier." "Thank you, Admiral. That means a lot." "Don't let it go to your head, Commodore," Foster said, but there was warmth in her voice. "You still have a mission to complete. Continue your exploration and make more friends for humanity. Just try not to save an entire civilization every week." "It makes the rest of us look bad," Daniel laughed. "I'll do my best, Admiral." After the transmission ended, Daniel made his way to the observation lounge, a large room with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the stars outside. Karen found him there, staring out at the endless cosmos. "Thinking about what comes next?" she asked, standing beside him. "Always," Daniel replied. "We've made contact with the Krell and helped save a dying civilization, but there's so much more out there. So many species we haven't met yet. Some will be friendly, some hostile, and some somewhere in between." "Do you ever worry that we're in over our heads?" Karen asked. Daniel considered the question. "Every single day. But then I remember that every great journey starts with people who are uncertain and afraid. The key is to keep moving forward despite the fear." "The crew believes in you," Karen said. "They trust your judgment." "I hope I can live up to that trust," Daniel said quietly. 3 weeks later, the Valiant and its escorts entered a new star system. Long-range sensors detected a massive space station orbiting the sixth planet, along with dozens of ships moving between the station and the planet's surface. "Sir, I'm receiving a hailing signal," Benjamin announced. "They're transmitting in multiple languages, including one that matches Krell linguistic patterns." "This must be a trading hub," Laura said, studying the energy signatures. "I'm detecting ships from at least 7 different species at that station." Daniel felt excitement building in his chest. A multi-species trading station meant opportunities for diplomatic contact and information gathering. "Open a channel, Benjamin. Let's introduce ourselves." A voice responded in perfect English, though with a strange melodic quality. "Unknown vessels, this is Nexus Station. Please identify yourselves and state your business." "This is Commodore Daniel Wright of United Earth. We're explorers making peaceful contact with other civilizations. We'd like permission to dock at your station." There was a pause, then the voice came back with evident surprise. "United Earth, the species that made an alliance with the Krell Collective." News traveled fast in this part of the galaxy, Daniel thought. "Yes, that's us. You've heard of humanity." "Everyone has heard of you, Commodore. The species with impossible technology that forced the mighty Krell to negotiate as equals. You're famous across half the sector. Permission to dock is granted. We're very curious to meet you." As the Valiant approached the massive station, Daniel could see it was truly enormous, easily 10 kilometers across with docking bays for ships of all sizes. The architecture was unlike anything human engineers had designed, with flowing organic curves mixed with hard geometric angles. "Prepare a diplomatic team," Daniel ordered. "Karen, you're with me. Ryan, bring a security detail but keep them low profile. Laura, I want you to meet with whatever scientists are on that station and exchange information. Greg, maintain yellow alert status while we're docked." The station's interior was a marvel of alien engineering. Corridors wide enough to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes. Atmosphere controls that could adjust to different species' needs in different sections. Shops and markets selling goods from across the galaxy. And aliens. So many different species that Daniel lost count. He saw beings that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of living crystal, some that floated in the air without visible means of support. The diversity of life in the galaxy was staggering. A delegation of 3 aliens approached Daniel's team. The leader was a being that resembled a tall, slender bird with iridescent feathers and large, intelligent eyes. "Commodore Wright, I am Trade Master Zalara. Welcome to Nexus Station. We serve as a neutral meeting ground for commerce and diplomacy among many species." "Thank you for having us," Daniel replied. "We're new to this part of the galaxy and eager to learn about our neighbors." Zalara's feathers ruffled in what might have been amusement. "Oh, I think you'll find that many of your neighbors are eager to learn about you. The humans who made the Krell back down without firing a shot. That's quite a reputation." Over the next few hours, Daniel met representatives from numerous species. Some were genuinely friendly and interested in establishing trade relations with humanity. Others were cautious, clearly intimidated by Earth's technological reputation. A few were openly hostile, viewing humans as potential threats to the existing balance of power. One encounter particularly stood out. A massive alien that looked like a living mountain of rock and metal approached Daniel in one of the station's common areas. Its voice rumbled like an avalanche. "I am Warlord Kren of the Vorlax Federation. I hear you forced the Krell to submit to your demands." Daniel stood his ground despite the creature's intimidating size. "That's not accurate, Warlord. We negotiated an alliance as equals. No one submitted to anyone." "The Krell do not negotiate with equals," Kren rumbled. "They conquer or they submit, which means you conquered them without firing a shot. Impressive." "Demonstrated that fighting us would be costly," Daniel said carefully. "So we chose to talk instead. It benefited both sides." Kren studied Daniel with eyes that glowed like molten metal. "The Vorlax have been rivals with the Krell for centuries. Perhaps we should talk as well. An alliance with a species the Krell fear could be valuable." "We don't want to get involved in your rivalry," Daniel said firmly. "But we're always willing to talk about mutual cooperation that benefits everyone involved." "I like you human," Kren said with what might have been a laugh. "You're cautious but not afraid, smart but not weak. Yes, we will talk more later." As the Vorlax warlord lumbered away, Kren whispered to Daniel, "You're collecting allies faster than I can keep track of. At this rate, we'll need a whole department just to manage diplomatic relations." "Better too many friends than too many enemies," Daniel replied. Their stay at Nexus Station lasted 3 days. During that time, Daniel established preliminary contact with 8 different species, exchanged technological information with 4 others, and set up future meetings with 6 civilizations interested in formal alliances with humanity. Dr. Bennett met with alien scientists and learned about galactic history, politics, and the complex web of relationships between different species. She discovered that the galaxy was divided into several major power blocks, with the Krell Collective being one of the largest. But there were others, some friendly and some decidedly not. Commander Tucker's security team gathered intelligence on potential threats. They learned about the Skrith Empire, a militaristic society that had been expanding aggressively in another part of the galaxy. They heard rumors of the Shadow Collective, a mysterious organization that operated in the darkest corners of space, and they discovered evidence of ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen long before any current species reached the stars. On their last day at the station, Trade Master Zalara hosted a formal dinner in honor of the human delegation. Representatives from dozens of species attended, and Daniel found himself the center of attention. "Tell us, Commodore," asked an aquatic being whose name Daniel couldn't pronounce, "what is humanity's goal in the galaxy? Do you seek to build an empire, to spread your influence and control?" Daniel stood to address the assembled crowd. "Humanity's goal is simple. We want to survive and thrive in a galaxy full of other intelligent life. We want to make friends, establish trade, share knowledge, and learn from others. We have no interest in empire building or conquest. We believe that cooperation benefits everyone more than domination benefits the few. But you have superior technology," pointed out an insectoid being. "History shows that technological superiority usually leads to expansion and control. History also shows that empires built on force eventually collapse," Daniel countered. "We'd rather build something that lasts, something based on mutual respect and shared benefits. Yes, we have advanced technology. We're willing to share some of it with species we trust, but we're also interested in what other species can teach us. Every civilization has something unique to offer." His words seemed to resonate with many in the audience. By the end of the evening, Daniel had received invitations to visit a dozen different homeworlds and attend multiple diplomatic summits. As the Valiant finally departed Nexus Station, Daniel stood on the bridge with his senior staff, reviewing everything they had learned. "We've made more progress in 3 days than I expected in 3 months, Karen said, scrolling through her notes. "Preliminary agreements with 8 species, information about galactic politics, and invitations to continue diplomatic work. We also learned about potential threats," Greg added. "This Skrith Empire sounds particularly concerning, Multiple species mentioned them as aggressive expansionists. We'll need to learn more about them, Daniel agreed. But not today. Right now, I think we've earned a break from first contact situations. Set course for the nearest Earth outpost. The crew deserves some rest. As the three ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, Daniel reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. Humanity had gone from isolated newcomers to respected participants in galactic civilization. They had made allies, prevented a planetary extinction, and established themselves as a force for peace and cooperation. But Daniel knew the easy part was over. Real challenges lay ahead. Species that wouldn't be impressed by demonstrations of power. Conflicts that couldn't be resolved with simple negotiations. Threats that would test humanity's resolve and capabilities. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers in equal measure. But Daniel Wright was ready to face whatever came next, armed with advanced technology, wise leadership, and the simple belief that friendship was stronger than conquest. In the end, that belief would shape humanity's place among the stars far more than any weapon ever could. The journey back to the nearest Earth outpost took 5 days at maximum faster-than-light speed. During that time, Daniel had plenty of opportunity to think about everything they had accomplished and everything that still lay ahead. He spent hours reviewing reports, analyzing diplomatic opportunities, and planning future missions. On the 3rd day of their journey, Dr. Laura Bennett requested a private meeting in his ready room. She arrived carrying a data pad and looking troubled. "Commodore, I've been analyzing all the information we gathered at Nexus Station," she began without preamble. "There's a pattern I think you need to see." Daniel gestured for her to continue. "Multiple species mentioned the Skrith Empire as a threat, but they all became evasive when I asked for details," Laura explained. "So I cross-referenced what each species told us and compared it with historical data we collected. The Skrith have been expanding steadily for the past 50 years. They've conquered or absorbed at least 23 civilizations during that time." "That's concerning," Daniel admitted. "But we're nowhere near Skrith territory. Why should this worry us right now?" "Because their expansion pattern is accelerating," Laura said, bringing up a holographic star map on her data pad. 50 years ago, they conquered one system every 3 years. 20 years ago, it was one system per year. Now they're taking multiple systems annually, and look at the direction they're moving. She manipulated the map, and Daniel saw the problem immediately. The Skrith expansion was heading directly toward the region of space where humanity had established its colonies. "How long before they reach human space?" Daniel asked quietly. "At their current rate of expansion." 10 to 15 years, Laura answered. "Maybe less if they continue accelerating." Daniel sat back in his chair, processing this information. "Have they made contact with the Krell?" "Yes, about 30 years ago. There was a brief conflict that ended in a stalemate. The Krell maintain a heavily fortified border with Skrith space, and neither side has attempted to cross it since." "So the Skrith know when to stop pushing," Daniel observed. "That suggests they're pragmatic, not suicidal." "True, but it also means they respect strength," Laura said. "Which brings me to my main concern. When the Skrith learn about humanity, they're going to want to test us. They'll want to know if we're strong enough to defend ourselves or weak enough to conquer." Daniel stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the stars streaking past as they traveled faster than light. "Then we need to make sure we're ready for that test when it comes. Add the Skrith to our priority intelligence list. I want to know everything about them, their military capabilities, their technology, their culture, their weaknesses." "Already working on it," Laura confirmed. "I've also been thinking about the species we helped, the ones tearing their planet apart with war. We left them with plans for rebuilding and medical assistance, but they're still decades away from space travel." "What about them?" Daniel asked. "They're going to need protection," Laura said. "Once word spreads that humanity intervened to save them, other species might see them as easy targets or potential allies to steal from under our noses. We should establish a monitoring station in their system, maybe leave some automated defense platforms." Daniel considered this suggestion carefully. "You're right. We can't just save a civilization and then abandon them to whatever comes next. Karen," he called out through the intercom. "Yes, sir," came Karen's voice. Add a note to our mission plan. After we resupply at the outpost, we're returning to the system where we brokered the peace agreement. We need to set up long-term support for their recovery. Understood, sir, Karen replied. Laura smiled. The crew is going to love you for that. Half of them have been asking if we can check on our friends. Our friends, Daniel repeated, liking the sound of that. That's exactly what they are, and friends look out for each other. When they finally reached the Earth outpost 3 days later, Daniel was surprised by the reception. The outpost commander, Captain Elizabeth Morgan, met them personally at the docking bay with a full honor guard. Commodore Wright, welcome to Outpost 7, she said, saluting crisply. Word of your accomplishments has reached us. Making peace with the Krell, saving an entire civilization, establishing contact with dozens of new species. You and your crews are heroes back on Earth. Daniel felt uncomfortable with the praise. We're just doing our jobs, Captain. You're doing a lot more than that, sir, Elizabeth replied. You're shaping how the entire galaxy sees humanity. That matters more than you might realize. Over dinner that evening with the outpost's senior staff, Daniel learned just how much impact his missions had made. News of humanity's diplomatic successes had spread throughout Earth's colonies. Recruitment for the Navy had tripled. Universities were overflowing with students wanting to study xenobiology, alien languages, and interstellar diplomacy. You've inspired an entire generation, Elizabeth told him. Young people who grew up thinking humanity was alone in the universe now dream of exploring the stars and making friends among alien species. That's wonderful, Daniel said genuinely. But I hope they understand it's not all exciting first contacts and dramatic negotiations. Most of exploration is routine, sometimes boring work. They'll learn that, Elizabeth agreed. But right now they need the inspiration. They need to believe that humanity has a bright future among the stars. The next morning, Daniel received a priority transmission from Earth Command. All 3 admirals appeared on his screen looking unusually serious. Commodore Wright, Admiral Foster began, we have a new assignment for you. The situation has become more complex than we anticipated. How so, Admiral? Daniel asked. Admiral Porter spoke next. Your reports about the Skrith Empire have been analyzed by our intelligence division. They confirm what you suspected. The Skrith are heading in our direction, and when they arrive, there will be conflict. We need you to do something difficult, Admiral Blake added. We need you to find the Skrith and make contact with them before they reach our borders. We need to know their intentions, their capabilities, and whether peaceful coexistence is possible. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. You want me to fly into Skrith territory and introduce myself to a militaristic empire that's conquered 23 civilizations? We know it's dangerous, Admiral Foster said, but you're the best person for this job. You've proven you can negotiate with hostile powers and come out with alliances instead of wars. If anyone can assess the Skrith threat and find a peaceful solution, it's you. And if peaceful solution isn't possible, Daniel asked quietly. The 3 admirals exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Blake answered. Then you gather as much intelligence as you can and get out alive. We need to know what we're facing so we can prepare our defenses. Daniel took a deep breath. Understood, admirals. When do we leave? As soon as your ships are resupplied and your crews are rested, Admiral Foster said. We're also sending you reinforcements. 2 more frigates are being dispatched to join your task force. And Commodore, one more thing. Yes, Admiral. Come back alive, Foster said, her stern expression softening slightly. Earth needs you. After the transmission ended, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, thinking about what lay ahead. Every previous mission had been challenging, but this was different. The Krell had been aggressive but ultimately reasonable. The warring planet had been desperate for help. The species at Nexus Station had been curious and open to friendship, but the Skrith were conquerors. They had built an empire on the subjugation of other species. They might not be interested in negotiation or alliance. They might see humanity as just another civilization to be absorbed into their empire. And if they did, Daniel would have to decide how far he was willing to go to defend humanity's independence. There was a knock at his door. Come in, he called. Karen entered, followed by Ryan Tucker and Laura Bennett. They all wore serious expressions. We heard about the new orders, Karen said. The whole crew is talking about it. Are they worried? Daniel asked. Some are, Ryan admitted, but most are ready to go. They trust you to get them through this safely. I hope I can live up to that trust, Daniel said quietly. You will, Laura said with confidence. You always do, but we wanted you to know that we're with you whatever happens, all of us. Daniel looked at his senior staff, the people he had come to trust with his life and the lives of everyone aboard the Valiant. Thank you. That means everything to me. So what's the plan, Commodore? Ryan asked. Daniel stood and activated the star map on his wall display. We head into Skrith territory carefully and quietly. We observe before we make contact. We gather intelligence and look for any opportunity to open peaceful dialogue. But if they prove to be as hostile as everyone says, we get out fast and report back to Earth. And if they try to stop us from leaving, Karen asked. Then they'll learn the same lesson the Krell learned, Daniel replied. That humanity is not easy prey. We'll defend ourselves if necessary, but we'll do everything possible to avoid escalation to full conflict. 2 weeks later, the Valiant led a small fleet of 5 ships across the border into Skrith space. The journey had been tense but uneventful. They had traveled carefully, using every stealth technology humanity possessed to avoid detection. Now they approached the first Skrith colony world, and Daniel could see immediately that this civilization was different from any they had encountered before. The planet's surface was covered with massive industrial complexes. Dozens of ships moved in strict military formations. Orbital defenses bristled with weapons. This was not a society that valued art, culture, or individual freedom. This was a war machine, efficient and ruthless. Commodore, we're being scanned, Greg Palmer reported. Multiple sources, they know we're here. I expected as much, Daniel replied calmly. Benjamin, transmit our standard greeting. Let's see how they respond. The response came quickly, and it was not friendly. A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language the computer quickly translated. Unknown vessels, you have violated Skrith space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. Here we go again, Daniel thought, but this time felt different. The Krell had been arrogant but ultimately pragmatic. These Skrith sounded like they expected immediate obedience without question. Open a channel, Benjamin, Daniel ordered. Channel open, sir. Daniel chose his words carefully. This is Commodore Daniel Wright of United Earth. We come in peace seeking diplomatic contact with the Skrith Empire. We mean no harm and request an audience with your leadership. The response was immediate and final. There is no diplomacy with inferior species. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to comply. Daniel looked at his crew. They all understood what this meant. The Skrith were not interested in talking. They saw humanity as prey, nothing more. Greg, shields to maximum, Daniel ordered quietly. All ships prepare for possible combat. But do not fire unless fired upon. The seconds ticked down. Daniel watched as Skrith warships moved to surround his small fleet. They were outnumbered 10-1 and more enemy ships were arriving every minute. Sir, they're charging weapons, Greg reported. Hold position, Daniel said calmly. Let's see if they're bluffing. They weren't bluffing. Energy beams lanced out from the Skrith ships, striking the Valiant's shields. Alarms blared across the bridge. Shields holding at 97%, Greg reported. Their weapons are less effective than the Krell's. Return fire all batteries, Daniel ordered. Target their weapons and engines. Disable, don't destroy. The Valiant and its escorts opened fire, and the result was devastating. Human weapons, far more advanced than anything the Skrith had encountered, tore through enemy shields and shredded their weapon systems. Within seconds, half the attacking ships were crippled and drifting. The Skrith ships that remained suddenly stopped firing. The harsh voice returned, but now it carried uncertainty instead of arrogance. What manner of vessels are these? Your weapons are beyond our understanding. I tried to tell you, Daniel replied. We came in peace. You chose violence. Now will you talk, or do we need to disable the rest of your fleet as well? There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through, deeper and more measured. I am Fleet Commander Dross of the Skrith Empire. You have demonstrated superior capabilities. We will talk. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. It seemed that no matter what species you encountered, overwhelming technological superiority was a language everyone understood. But he also knew this was just the beginning. The Skrith would not forget this humiliation. The question was whether they would seek revenge or accommodation. Either way, humanity's reputation in the galaxy had just grown even larger. And Daniel Wright had once again proven that sometimes the best way to achieve peace was to show you were too strong to fight.